Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I'm still at the Salt Lake terminal. I got a load dispatch, but I don't have to pick it up till this evening. So that load's going down to the Central Valley of California. Stop in Vegas in the morning and pick up my trainee, and then we'll get the show on the road. So anyway, so I wanted to mention a place here in Utah, but it's also a place in New Mexico, Colorado, and Arizona, and it's the Four Corners area. And if you've ever been through there, you can actually stop, and there's a monument. And the first time I ever went through there was like the middle of the night, but we still stopped. So anyway, the interesting thing about the Four Corners area is, and this is the southwest corner, Colorado, the southeast corner of Utah, the northeast corner of Arizona, and the northwest corner of New Mexico. It's the only place in the United States where four states basically meet. But it almost wasn't a thing. And by the way, I got my Colorado logo cycling shirt on today, even though I'm in Utah. But it almost wasn't a thing. And what happened was, if you've ever noticed state boundaries and you're like, well, how did they get there? Well, state boundaries typically have been natural barriers like rivers. There's a lot of state boundaries where you cross a river and you're in a new state. I mean, if you cross the Mississippi River on any number of highways, you're going to be in a different state. Same thing with the Missouri River. You cross out of Iowa into Nebraska. You cross out of Minnesota into, like Minnesota in, no, I take it back. Cross out of South Dakota into Nebraska. Anyway, you get the picture, right? A lot of rivers, Red River, Oklahoma, Texas. So what happened though with the Four Corners is that whole area was basically, I don't want to say captured, but basically taken from Mexico after the Mexican War. Now there was already a New Mexico territory, and in 1861 the United States created a Colorado territory directly above the New Mexico territory. So what they basically said in 1863 is that Congress said, oh, well, we're just going to create this Arizona territory by extending the line that's already there between Colorado and New Mexico westward, just straight west. And that was an unusual piece of legislation because they never did it again, and they had never done it before that. But by so doing, they basically guaranteed that there was going to be four states. I mean, I guess something could have happened that could have intervened, but it didn't. And they sort of basically created the Four Corners by legislative fiat. Because there's no natural, it's just, if you've been there, there's no mountains separating the sides, or there's not a river or anything like we'd think of. So anyway, that's a little bit about the Four Corners and how it got created. And it's kind of fun to visit. And there is a place where you can stand, and if you bend over, you put your hands, you can be in four states at one time. Anyway, I was asked a question about trip planning, and I did a previous video about like how I pick a load, but this is about once I have the load, how do I plan the trip? How do I plan the route, where I'm going to stop, etc.? I guess the first thing I would say is that almost every dispatch I get, I kind of have an idea of where I'm going. And sometimes if I don't know exactly where a place is, I will look it up before I accept the load. And that's just, again, that comes back to, what loads do I take? But I also want to understand what my routing is going to be or could be. Now, I will tell you that I often route differently than a lot of drivers would, because I want to see something, or I like a certain road to drive on, or I'm trying to avoid something like tolls. So for instance, if I had a trip from, let's just say from Baltimore to Minneapolis, I probably, if you look that up on, any GPS thing, it'll tell you you're going to go west on 70, you're going to take, and then you're going to turn northward at Hancock, Maryland, where 70 turns north. 70 runs into I-76, which is the Pennsylvania Turnpike at Breezewood. And then you're going to take 76 and you're just going to stay on it till it turns into I-80 in Ohio as part of the Ohio Turnpike. And you're just going to take 80 across, maybe get on Tri-State Tollway up to the Jane Addams, which is I-90, and then you would have been on 80-90 through part of Ohio and Indiana. And then you're just going to take 90 up to Toma, Wisconsin, and then 94 up to the Twin Cities area. I-94 comes in, it meets basically in Madison, and then they split again in Toma, Wisconsin. But I might take a different route depending on how much time I have. So one thing that I would probably do is, instead of turning northward and staying on 70 in Hancock, Maryland, I probably would stay going westward on Interstate 68, and take that over to Morgantown, West Virginia, and possibly take 79 up to 70, and this is the non-turnpike part of 70 in Washington, Pennsylvania, and go across that way, because I want to avoid tolls on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. If I wanted to avoid, not avoid all the tolls going up there, and keep in mind there's a lot of toll roads on that route. There's the PA Turnpike, Ohio, Indiana Toll Road, the Tri-State Tollway, and the Jane Addams 90 going west out of Chicago is also a toll road until you get up to like Rockford and you run into, well, actually it goes all the way to the border, because there's a South Beloit, Illinois toll plaza. So it's toll all the way till you get to the Wisconsin line. I probably wouldn't try to avoid all those tolls, because that would take a pretty circuitous route, and I have to balance the toll money I save with the extra fuel that I use to take a longer route. So a lot of the choices I make on route selection is based on stuff like that. The other thing that I often base my selection on is truck stops, or places that I know I can stop, that I'm comfortable with, and that I know is going to have parking at the time I want to stop. And sometimes I wait to leave, or sometimes I leave as early as possible. So for example, if I have a drop and hook at a shipper and it gives me a window, sometimes I'll get there at the very back end of the window, because I want to delay my departure so that I don't arrive too early at the receiver. Other times I just want to drive slow, perhaps, or I want to beat traffic, and so I'll leave earlier. If I got to go through Atlanta or Houston or Dallas, those are places I always want to try to hit in the middle of the night. So sometimes an entire trip is based on when I want to get into and out of a big metropolitan area. Nashville's another area that's a hassle during the day. I actually don't avoid places like Chicago or Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati. I don't avoid those places during the day. Denver is a lot easier to deal with when it isn't daylight. So it just depends on, it depends on if I got to go through a major metropolitan area, when I want to try to hit that. Because sometimes I want to hit it early in the morning, or late at night, and then stop in the morning. Another consideration is just how much weight I'm carrying, how flat the trip is going to be. I got to admit, there's pretty much no interstate that I like driving on in West Virginia. It's not because the road surfaces are particularly bad. It's just interstates in West Virginia, like all roads in West Virginia, are just like constant up and down and curves. It is a very tiring place to drive. Because even when you're driving through the mountains, let's say on I-81, there are significant stretches of 81 where it's flattens out a little bit. It's not too steep either up or down, and it's fairly straight. That is not a common phenomenon in any part of West Virginia. So, honestly, if I can, even though sometimes it's a shorter route to go cut through West Virginia, sometimes I just avoid it if I have the time. So a lot of what drives my trip planning is time. But I'll just give you an example on the trip that I'm getting ready to go on. So I've already scoped out, I know where I got to pick up, and it's close by. I got to pick up at 2200. Now, I thought about calling and seeing if I could get over there earlier, but then I realized I don't want to pick up any earlier than 2200 because it is a drop and hook. Because I want to drive slow and overnight down to Vegas. So I want to get to Vegas around 6 in the morning because I'm going to stop at a TA that's a little bit south of the main part of Vegas. And I know that place has very limited parking, but that's where I want to meet my trainee. Then we're probably going to drive during the day, and we're just going to drive over to Tehachapi, California. And I know there's a Love's that I like there that has pretty ample parking. There's also a Flying J there. It's a good location. It's actually a very nice area. You can get out and walk and do whatever, and it's an area I like to go to because I like watching trains. So I can park and actually see the trains going by that are going up to the Tehachapi Loop. And then it's a short trip from there over to our 90, which is near Bakersfield. But by getting there tomorrow midday, and we can't deliver till a little before 4 on Wednesday, it's a good place to kill some time. And then like tomorrow, once we get there, or actually Wednesday morning once place clears out, I can actually use that parking lot to at the Love's or something to help do some backing exercises for my trainee so she can get used to being in a truck stop and stuff. So that's kind of how I think about these things. I mean, and then once I get over in the Central Valley, I know I'm going to get unloaded, but because and this is an advantage when you have a team, you don't have to stop moving. You don't have to stop for 10 hours. So what I'm hoping is that I will get a load immediately that we can go pick up somewhere in the Central Valley and run it, overnight and really kind of get into the groove of doing the training and running and giving her an opportunity to see lots of training scenarios. So anyway, I don't know if that was helpful. It's kind of hard to disgorge everything you have in your mind that you go through, but yeah, I mean, every bit of information that I have in my head about places I've been, I use, and I'm like, oh, I hate that road. It's like, and there are some roads I just do not like driving because I can't think of an interstate highway that I haven't driven most of in the United States. Like every major route, I've been at the ends, the terminus points of them all. So I've driven 80 coast to coast, 90 coast to coast, and maybe not all in one trip, but I've been on every segment of the road, so I know what to expect. 95, 40, I'm pretty sure I've driven I've driven the entire I-5 up the West Coast. I-15, I've driven that from, Barstow all the way to the Canadian border, and then actually up into Canada, towards Lethbridge. But so I kind of know what I'm gonna face. One road I love in the summertime and on a weekday is I-70 across Colorado. It's a little bit of challenge in a truck, but it's still a beautiful drive. But at night, it's not worth, like they say, that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, because the road doesn't change, you just can't see anything. And that's the reason to drive that route, is because it's so scenic. The same thing with, there's some other routes going through mountains or other places that are cool to see that I might not take if I got to take it at night. I'm not a big fan of some, like, I don't like 70 running across Kansas. It's just, to me, it's very boring. I'll do it if it's the most direct route, but it's also a toll road. Not in love with 90 across South Dakota, but again, I'll take the road if I have to. And obviously there's the big ones like 80 across Wyoming almost any time, but especially in the winter. That's a road that I'll do it, and I'll make sure I'm keeping super close track of the weather. And I've run that in the winter time, but I'm very careful about making that choice. If I have to, like if I was here in Utah and I thought there were going to be a lot of storms, I'd probably head south and go down through Moab and get on the 40 and work my way back up if I needed to, say, be in Chicago or something, or just wait. That's the other option, just wait it out. Anyway, I hope that's helpful, and if there are specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, and let everybody know, share the knowledge, I guess you'd say. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be updating you as things go along. And you're going to be over in California on Wednesday, and maybe running the West Coast a little bit. See what happens. So anyway, be safe. Talk to you soon. Bye.